Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined by the one, the only, John Riggio, our amazing tennis player. He's a tennis pro. He's an architect. He wears many hats and just the most down-to-earth guy that I know. I've been talking to him for years. I've known him for, and every time we speak, there's always a new story. You know, it glues me. The celebrity stories of the people who he knows in the tennis world and the underground tennis world and all this, and let alone the other side of him as an amazing architect and that work. And seeing is believing, and he shows a lot of pictures. So I really love that, John. Welcome back today, John Riggio. How are you?
Great. Hi, Jill. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Great to see you here again. Tell us who John Riggio is in your own words.
Yes. I usually talk about my architect profession, but I also have a lot of stories from years ago when I was a pro tennis player. And remembering all these stories, I have more and more things to say today. I have all kinds of different stories to continue from, which are really good. I think just to continue from last week, the story with the tennis player Mark Schumacher, just to finish off some interesting notes, is yeah, he was a little older than me. He was originally from Wisconsin. He was the #1 player over there.
Wow.
I just had to remember that. And one interesting thing about that whole story that was so tragic was well, very possibly he might have just passed on. I mean, he might not have, horrible things might not have really happened to him completely.
You
So
mentioned
that,
a lady was charged, right? Or you think
yes.
with his death?
Yes, what happened is, yes, that's correct. Yes, there was someone was arrested from the tennis center. I don't know what kind of charge or conviction they received, but they did, and they did get the video proof of that. And now what happened is, before this happened, I did stop over at his house a few times since he lived in the area, and I was talking to him about some tennis things about the National Tennis Center, and that's what I was explaining to him, that the National Tennis Center, they were really acting like a devil to everyone they're trying to do to stay in. So what happened is, from talking to him, he bought a whole security system and a whole service that had video cameras all over his house. And when I was talking to him about things like that, like they were acting like a devil to him, him and his family, they were going to church. He's gonna repent from that. So what happened is, so from those stories, talking to him about tennis and things like that they didn't probably stay in, was so when I heard about that happening, yeah, I think it was pretty sad. And just to really explain this, like I think like it was 5 years later, back in 1998, just by chance somehow I talked to him and his wife a couple times, and I didn't ever see them again. So, but they were always thanking me when I talked to them a few years later. So something did happen. They knew something happened, and it was very real. So I think they might have just passed on. So that was really lucky. So today, what happened is, from the last week, I was still thinking about the last years of my playing and the whole time there in like 1996, and I forgot about a very important piece of my tennis history. What happened was, I explained last week about from the time my tennis contract was bought over, that I was listed in the newspaper here in New York, Newsday, that my name was listed as Ron Devlin with the $100 million contract. Then added on to with Adidas and Reebok for the $120 million. And then since Reebok had a problem getting me on the court, I just was able to just hit the ball with some other tennis pros. I called Gloria Vanderbilt, and she was really impressed with this whole thing with Adidas and Reebok. And now she was just saying that since she had sold the contract, she could only reference somebody.
Oh my gosh.
She thought about some people that she knows that she can that can take on a contract this size. And it was Miss Leona Helmsley from Manhattan, New York. They're from a hotel.
I remember the Helmsley on 42nd Street.
Yes. What happened is, they gave me the phone number to Miss Helmsley, and I called them up on the phone. And I offered that they could have me as a tennis player and sponsor my tennis. So I
Wow.
talked to Miss Helmsley in person on the phone. This was maybe two, three phone calls. And they weren't interested. She was interested. And from that, they had to put together me, Miss Helmsley, and Miss Vanderbilt. And
Mm-hmm.
they devised an idea for me to play some matches back on Sutton East. So 6 years later, they put together a match right away. So all these phone
Wow.
calls from Japan, from Adidas, Reebok, in like just 1 week, they could put together this whole thing. So this is really a sponsor that could do it. Now, the only thing they told me initially on my telephone conversations is they thought I was too old because I'm 28 years old
Mm.
and my contract is $120 million to buy. So they thought I need to really play with them for 5 years. So I was able to go down to the Sutton East, and they had a player there from the National Tennis Center.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened is I entered into the Sutton East there, and I meted Miss Gory Vanderbilt, Miss Leon Helmsley. Said hello
Wow.
to them because they're the people who were on my side and everything, and they had some friends there uh, and to watch the match. I think Mr. Helmsley was there, and they were sitting there by the glass in the Sutton East. So we went onto the court. My opponent was there. Now my opponent's name was he's let me just get his name. He said his name was McNellis,
Wow.
and this player was so outrageous that I couldn't believe what happened. So this was really just like a demonstration match. It was a real match through the ATP. And we started to play the match, and he was unbelievable that he was cheating on every shot. I
Wow.
hit the ball past him to his left side, and he didn't want to admit that it was in at all. And
Wow.
then from him hitting the ball, they could tell he's using this big, heavy racket, and it's this heavy
Mm-hmm.
cheat racket. So after this started to happen, I complained to the sponsors, and then I played just a couple more points with him, and I complained to them saying this whole thing is a joke. And my sponsors, they had him go over to them in the room there. They inspected his racket. They wrote down the information about his tennis racket, called on the telephone. My sponsors were really unbelievable. I think Miss Vanderbilt was
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. Miss Hemsley, I don't think she was completely aware of this thing with the cheat rackets. And what happened is that game had to get stopped completely. I was really just totally winning the match anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
what they did to him is they didn't confiscate his tennis racket, but he left. And the next time he went to go play a pro match, they already put through to investigate and inspect his racket. And
Oh,
when he
wow.
went to play with the cheat racket again, they had to have the police come and they had to arrest him. So that
Holy
was
cow.
unbelievable. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And they were so angry about this. My sponsors were so angry that this guy came here and disrupted our
Yeah.
match, not playing sportsmanlike and really cheating and everything. It was really unbelievable. But I think then at that particular event, the other player left, and I talked to my sponsors, and we talked about Delilah, and I
Mm-hmm.
had to tell them the unfortunate news that Delilah had died because of the problems with her father,
Oh.
and they were sort of sad about it. They liked this idea of my girlfriend and everything. We're
Mm-hmm.
together. So what happened is I went back home and during that time in 1996, I ended up moving from where I was living.
Yeah.
So I called back to Miss Vanderbilt, updated my phone numbers and everything. And what happened is they had an idea that this idea of playing some demonstration matches and some ATP matches I was allowed to continue on for like 6 months. So during this time, Miss Leone Helmsley, she can research and see if she wants to try to buy this $120 million contract, maybe get them down in the price.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I also called over to Reebok, told them the good news that they got me back on the court right away, and they're interested in possibly buying the contract. And he was saying that they would, of course, have the whole thing negotiated with their lawyers. That, of course, he isn't negotiating the contract. So of what happened is since they know that I'm 28, going up to 29, and the contract size is so large,
Yeah.
they had to think about if it's still feasible to do this. So what happened is that I was able to play some more matches.
Mm-hmm.
The matches, some of them were just warm-up matches. I think we didn't get to the point where I could really start playing the ATP tournaments again. But I was able to play a series of matches. The match after that first one that was horrible, I didn't win the match. I lost the next match. And of course, I told them I need to play a number of matches to really sharpen up. I
Wow.
did continue to sharpen my game. I started to win matches. This player I had lost again,
Mm-hmm.
I got to play him again a couple of weeks later, and I was able to win against him. So it shows I was able to really start to play. Even though I'm 29 years old, my winning ability is still there. I was still able to play really good. So I played for a number of months,
Mm-hmm.
and the time extension of approximately 6 months it started to come to an end. The Miss Leona Hamsley, I think from the beginning was saying I was too old and the price of this too expensive to put the whole thing together and make the numbers work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't able to buy the contract, so they didn't buy the contract.
Ah,
I was able to get some more playing in, and it was official pro matches back at the Sutton East. So it was pretty good. So this is sort of what happened is, unfortunately, is so from the time from Mitsubishi to this time, which was a number of years, things started to get where I was getting older and was running out of time to continue playing. And I think originally, at the time when I was playing at Sutton East and they were selling my contract, I think they did contact Leona Helmsley as someone that might be interested to buy my contract. At that time, it was sold for the gross number of $30 million. But I think they weren't available at that time to invest in my tennis. So since they weren't there, they were busy doing other things. They missed out on buying it for
wow.
30 million. And then when it came finally time to take a look at my contract, it was already up to $120 million. It was becoming too expensive, and I was getting older at 29. The really age limitation for playing the adult tennis is 36 years old.
Wow.
After 36 years old, you're really like a senior tennis player already. And I think on average, most people they only play to maybe 30 years old at the most, because what happens is as you get older, you can't really win all the matches, and then your
Mm-hmm.
percentage goes down, and then of course you start to go into like a retirement of playing. So that's what
Wow.
starts to happen. But I was able to play really good. I felt young. I
Yeah.
didn't feel old. I was still in excellent shape. I had gone for a physical examination, and my fat percentage was still only 6%. I was really in excellent condition. So I was still able to play very young, and I thought I could still play. I think the amount of money and things like that, just thinking about the numbers, I think I could, of course, continue keep winning, and I think they could make all the money on the contract, but it's really their decision. They know the numbers and things like that, and it was getting too chancy since I was 29 and the price of the contract was so high
Oh
that it
my
was
gosh.
they couldn't add on to the contract. Now I think Adidas and Reebok was somehow able to add on to the contract. They couldn't really add on to the contract or thought of any other type of idea to keep me playing there. Maybe there was some way to do that, but at the time they weren't able to really do it. So that is what
Yeah.
happened. So I think that was very interesting. And
Are you pulling up pictures or what are you doing?
yeah, I just want to check my notes here for a
Oh,
minute.
okay, okay.
So I think that was very interesting. And I think one interesting thing about the contract and uh, at this time was also some things about sport business. And I think some of this also had to do with Delilah was with the sport business, usually what they do is like the money that would go to the player, they're not really allowed to pay the player directly unless it is reimbursing travel expenses. So the money usually would have to go to an agent. Optimally, you would have an agent, and then the agent could inflate the prices. And by inflating the prices, the player would get more money, the agent would get more money, and things would usually go better overall because he has his own input into it. And so that it was one interesting thing. Without the agent, the money has to usually go to like a parent. And the parent then would take the money and they could keep it in the checking account, they could keep it in a fund for them. In theory, the parent would then give the player, which is their child, some money to spend. And so that was very interesting what was happening. And what happened is, as far as that type of situation was concerned, was really for me, I didn't really have an agent. So the money was originally the basic expenses went to the parents, so that's what really happened. Then, unfortunately, that type of problem was also happening with my girlfriend. Um, Now, at the time, I had this experience of going to Hawaii to play the contract with the same owners of the $100 million, $120 million contract. Was to go to Hawaii, live there, and play some tennis with them. And in theory, it would start to go back to playing pro matches or something like that. So at this time, my girlfriend Delilah, which was always part of my tennis, I think I had described that we had the picture together at the Fisher Open and things like that, and she was at the other um, tennis events. So she was really at a point where things were a little bit calm. She had gone through all kinds of crazy things that happened to her. And for one crazy thing that happened to her was uh, her father started to take the fall, sort of, with a lot of different things because he was someone who really liked my idea of tennis, and he used to play some tennis when he was
Mm-hmm.
younger. He played some ITF tennis. And what happened was somehow the whole thing really went so unbelievable that it's like a story that I think most people couldn't really believe. He started to change his religion
Wow.
also, which was very interesting. I think Delilah used to always ask me about religion, and I used to recommend her watching the Catholic Mass on television. And in fact, things were working very good with that idea. So what happened is also the father was getting into all kinds of strange things because he had this gay lover, even though he had originally Delilah's mother and that was his wife and everything. He was into really unbelievable things, and this culminated into something where the his gay lover gave him a suitcase of $40,000 in cash
Whoa.
as a payment to do things with Delilah. So what
Ouch.
happened is I told Delilah at that time, because I was at the time trying to get together this idea of going to Hawaii, and I asked her to go to Hawaii with me, and she said yes, she wants to go to Hawaii.
Hmm.
So what happened is with this suitcase of money is I told her that the suitcase is obviously counterfeit dollars. So she really couldn't believe it, and she went back to her father, got the suitcase of money, and brought it to the bank. So they went to one of the local banks. And the local banks took the money and they checked the money, and the whole suitcase had to get confiscated. It was almost all counterfeit.
Oh.
So what happened is the police came over and they were involved with this whole thing with the counterfeit money.
Uh-huh.
Um, so all that money was pretty much lost. The whole thing was found out to have been just a joke. So I think not only was
Mm.
we were doing strange things, fooling Delilah, but they were obviously just fooling the father. The father
Yeah.
was trying to act a little smart the whole time, and he was really good at outsmart everybody. Was really getting fooled too, and so they lost that $40,000. So at the time in 1995, like in coming around November 1995, Delilah was in a quiet time. She was right there in that Broadway mall that I showed pictures of.
Yeah, in
And
Hicksville.
she still had the same job there
Mm.
working at Auntie Anne, even though she went to college and
Yeah.
everything, graduated from college. So what happened is she was interested to go to Hawaii. So the
Mm.
first trip was really a test to see if I could really meet those people and make something happen. And when I did meet,
Yeah.
I told her, and the reason why she originally really couldn't make the whole thing happen to start off with is because when she talked to her father, the father was claiming that he had control over what they call conservatorship, like a fund of money that he was holding. Now, this fund of money was like maybe partly an inheritance. Other money was money that she had made in entertainment. And in my personal opinion, I don't think he ever had any official fund for her at all. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
just lying. And but she was
Hmm.
sticking to this idea. Now she's the same age as me. I'm 28 years old. She's
Okay.
28 years old, and this is a little bit older to really have this kind of problem. I said I'd cover whatever money that she's supposed to get anyway, and I was already working, as architect, starting to move up. I can get the same kind of job in Hawaii also, and so she really had an initial problem because the father was threatening not to give her any money if she goes ahead and leaves with me.
Oh.
And I think, given the situation that she had, where in her house she had a same kind of situation where she had security cameras all over, and the police were aware of her family problems with her parents,
Mm-hmm.
that this thing with not giving her any money was really probably something that she'd have to go to court about.
Wow.
And I think just her arguing with the father wasn't going to solve her problems. So what happened is I went to Hawaii. I made contacts there with my sponsors. I told the story of how I met the different entertainers. Gwen Stefani was there, did the
Mm-hmm.
autograph signing, came back here. And when I showed her proof of that I did all those things, I think that's when this whole thing about her not being allowed to go because of the money and the conservatorship and everything really made her mind go wild. And she eventually just ran back to her home and must have had a dispute with the father, argument.
Wow.
I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what happened. Just remembering the past, months later, I was talking to one of her best friends, and I
Mm-hmm.
did get the confirmation that there was a funeral
Ah.
and they had a closed casket for Delilah. So that was really confirming that there was a real death took place. It was really her, it seems, and that's what happened. And then I think I'd said on one of the previous things, the story was the father had immediately left the house, moved everything out, and was found dead in Florida.
Ah.
He was someone who
God.
started to get himself into a lot of trouble,
Yeah.
involved with a lot of bad things, and he also ended up where he was no longer alive. So that's what happened, and that is all over the same issue of the money. I think one thing about him with the thing, when I was looking for an agent, I offered for him to become the agent, and he said, "Yeah, he sounds good." But then when he realized he doesn't have a license officially to become
Mm-hmm.
an agent, he couldn't. He put his name down that he was the agent, and then he started to get himself in big trouble. We weren't doing things with people who were just playing around. They really need official license. They need, in writing that he's an agent and everything like that. And I arranged an appointment for him to go down and just get his license, a time and date and everything. He didn't want to go. He was concerned that he was going to get the
Yeah.
trust. So this is some things that were affecting myself. So this idea of him doing the agent work was really just like a lie. I think he was playing around with the daughter's life, and then he started to do it with me with that, and it really went to where I went to my lawyers, went to the government. They knew that this guy was supposed to have a license, and he had to show up to show he has a license because he claimed in writing that he was an agent. He wasn't really that aware
Mm-hmm.
that he needed the license.
Wow.
So, well, he's someone who originally wasn't born here in the U.S. I don't
Okay.
know what age he came. He was originally born over in Shanghai, China, but I don't know. He wasn't really aware of that. I don't know what kind of education and things like that. He wasn't necessarily fully aware of what's going on. But so when I explained what's going on, I patched the whole thing up for him. So all he has to do is go down to this. It was really like the tobacco agency. He just goes down there and he just applies for the license. They probably give it to him very easily. I don't think
Yeah.
he'll have a problem. And this would cover all of his legal problems. Things would potentially benefit, but I don't know. I think his personality, he was used to maybe just playing around with things like that, that it wasn't really real, wasn't in writing. I think his job really didn't make that much money from what I was told. He was working graphic arts.
Oh my
I was told
gosh.
he only maybe ended up with $20,000 a year. And I think it was Delilah that was earning the money to pay the bills. So that was,
Oh,
mother didn't work either. She stayed at home. So that was really an amazing story. So this whole thing with Delilah was really
yeah. We
involved with
only
the
have a minute
tennis.
left. We have to
Oh,
wrap it
okay.
up. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
And but that is really the very interesting thing about the sport business. And I think her problem with the father and her getting older, that she's 28, it was really sort of sad. And at that point, I was patching it up for her again, where she can make the move over to Hawaii with me for at least a minimum of
Oh,
3 years, probably have
yeah.
something like that. But she, in fact, had a serious problem with this whole thing with the money, that she was supposed to receive the money, and her father could just say she can't get any money, and that would stop her from doing what she wants. And this culminated into
Mm,
a big problem, and that was really a sad kind of thing. She already had so many horrible problems
yep.
happening over the last previous years that this was a quiet time, and I gave her the whole thing to get out of her problems again, which I always like to do. And
Yeah.
when I first met her, I paid her clothing bill at the local clothes store in the mall. She had a bill when I was there. They told me directly too. She had to pay like $200 in clothing bill.
Oh
I
my.
paid the bill for her, got out of her troubles when she was younger.
Mm.
Her parents didn't pay her clothing bill, so I ended up paying her clothing bill when she was
Oh,
young. So we always had this thing going from the beginning to the end with her,
yeah.
and it was over the same idea of this money that she claims was in a fund. But I know the
Oh,
father, the way he must have already spent it in his checking account. He never had
oh
any.
my gosh.
That's really what happened to that story.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry. We have to wrap it up. Oh, how do we contact you? Please share.
Sure. You can go on to my webpage, uh, johnriggio.com
Perfect.
for my architect profession, or for tennis, you can go to John Riggio Pro Tennis Player on Facebook. And
Great.
there you can send me a message and look at pictures, stories, how all kinds of a
Will do.
list of tennis events and sponsors and things like that. You could read all about them, and they're very good.
Perfect. We will. Thank you so much, John. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.